Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our podcast today on integrated PLM platform or best of breed PLM tools with integrations, where we are discussing the two options and look a little bit into what are the benefits and challenges with either approach. I'm Andreas Lindenthal, founder and managing partner of PLM Advisors. We're a technology neutral and vendor independent consulting firm, and we specialize in PLM, innovation, new product development, and digital transformation. With me today is Joseph Frascati. He's a partner with the Strata Fusion Group and also a longtime Bay Area technology executive. Hello, Joseph. Welcome and thank you
Hello.
for joining me today. This is the second podcast we're doing together, and I'm very excited to have you here given the topic.
For sure. Happy to be here. Excited as always, and looking to get into it.
Wonderful. All right. So before we start, though, with the actual topic, can you tell our listeners just a little bit about yourself?
Certainly. Hi, everybody. I'm a partner at the Strata Fusion Group. We're a Bay Area-based consulting firm specializing in IT advisory, cybersecurity, and digital transformation. I've spent the last few decades helping product-driven companies of all sizes and stages navigate digital transformation, particularly areas like CRM, PLM, ERP, and manufacturing systems.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I know as a CIO, you have been responsible for a few PLM evaluation and implementation projects. And you and I have worked together on a few. Can you briefly describe the projects that you did? What was the scope or the objectives?
Yeah, sure. So it started actually, I was in the configuration management world. We helped product management with product hierarchy and rules that were then consumed downstream for quote configuration and shop floor assembly. And the purpose in those first portion of my career was to help align configurations toward like the company vision of how they wanted their products to be sold, what markets they were trying to penetrate, and reduce the propensity for invalid quotes to not only be quoted to a customer, but to hit the shop floor, causing assembly issues. So that's sort of where I dipped my toe or first got my exposure to some components of product lifecycle management. And since then, it's always been a component of the tech stack of any company I've been at. It could be neglected application syndrome, per se, where you might be coming in new. You need to demystify an older system during discovery, or maybe there's an issue and something that's business critical, like parts flowing where they need to flow, new part numbers being released, things of that nature. They stop working, and you're assisting with various, issues, some situations where we've helped our quality organization navigate the complexities that arise when we use contract manufacturing. Carving out data as part of a divestiture, did one of those, and for obvious reasons that can be a little tricky, but very much touches the PLM world. And then more recently, inheriting challenged or limited applications and converting that into a transformational roadmap, usually at growing companies that are really need these system changes in order to accomplish their business goals.
All right. Well, thanks for summarizing that. Obviously, you again have been involved in quite a few different projects
Yeah.
with a lot of different systems also. So but let's start. When companies implement PLM, it's really rarely on a nice green field where there's nothing else. Usually, there's already systems there. There's other systems, that do some of the things that PLM would do. So, for example, there might be a PDM system in place, right, that manages CAD data. There may be a QMS system in place that manages quality data, NCRs, non-conformance reports, deviations, kappas, excuse me, etc. I'm sure you've been in these situations. Well, I know you've been in these situations again because we worked together on one of those. But what was your approach in these situations? Did you try to replace them all? Did you try to keep them all in place and then integrate them with the new PLM system? Or did you leave them in place as standalone systems with no integrations to the new PLM system whatsoever?
Yeah, right. All the above, you know. So how do you get to that answer, right? Because it can be different based on each country, company's unique situation. So when I come into an organization, you know, I suggest, hey, define what the company's end state looks like. That's going to change, but you have to start somewhere, right? Every company's vision changes a little, or a lot. And then you look at your processes and systems today and where they need to be in 1 to 5 years to support that company plan. That grounding is incredibly important to keep you from spinning with too many options. As you do that, you score the systems that are already there in ways that help you form a picture about how long-lived an application might be at that company, or how flexible you need to be with multiple geographies or other such things that can influence your decisions in technical architecture. And that whole rationalization exercise informs, you know, how you sketch your architecture for the future, how you prioritize projects, where you think the value is. You better understand the long poles of the tent, so to speak. And that helps map out what I refer to as the sequencing. What happens in which order, which things are in parallel, which things are serial. Final system selection comes after that, but leaders working with the various functional teams should be able to sketch 70 to 80% of what that looks like, and be pretty accurate. Not necessarily vendor names, but you know, the big boxes and what functions should be sitting in, you know, which systems or types of systems. I have to say, the toughest cleanup jobs I've done are where that plan was not followed. There was no tech plan anchored by a company plan, and that usually leads to like a really complex transformation a pretty messy systems and landscape and architecture. So, you know, I'm answering the question a little bit indirectly. I know we're probably going to get into a whole lot of detail, but focus top down, because otherwise, you know, the choices seem endless.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I understand that, yes, and I very much agree. I think it is important to start with the big picture, and as you said, kind of put the pieces in place and say, well, okay, we're gonna do this with PLM. We're gonna leave that system in place for whatever reason, and we integrate PLM with ERP, whatever. But I think that to have that strategy first is really important. Now, for an overall approach, there, even if there's no other systems in place, or if there are other systems in place, there's still the possibility to, or there's really two options. And obviously the topic of the podcast kind of alluded to that. We can either go with one integrated PLM platform for all areas of the business involved in new product development. So sales, product management, project management, engineering, quality, sourcing, manufacturing, etc. Even suppliers and all that. They potentially can all work in one integrated system with integrated processes and everything. And today the leading PLM systems certainly have that functionality to support and enable all that. Or
Yeah.
the second option is you can pursue a so-called best of breed approach, or some people call it a federated approach, where you have basically the different functional areas each use the system that meets their specific business needs, or they think they meet their specific business needs the best. And then, of course, to integrate those different systems. Those are really kind of the two very high level approaches, regardless whether there's systems in place or whether you basically really start on a green field. Just the pieces probably come a little bit differently together, but in the end, they should all come together. But what business benefits do you see with either approach? So go with one integrated platform or best of breed.
Okay. So let's do single platform. So, you know, single platform has the potential to simplify workflow, reduce different business languages or terms or definition of terms. That can have a lot of value, reduces translation issues, in other words. It could make your licensing cost management more simple. It could make the skill sets of your organization more fungible. A lot of organizations feel a little bit trapped when they have disparate skill sets associated to this disparate tech landscape, and they, sometimes have a V8 moment where they say, "Oh, maybe we should have consolidated more." Sometimes that's appropriate, sometimes not, right? Every business is different. Um, Best of breed. You get the flexibility to take advantage of functionalities that are outside a particular vendor stack. And that's good in a couple ways. It may fit your business a little bit better. That's a good reason. It could be that the big vendor maybe moves a little slower, and heck, maybe they're not investing in a particular module because they feel like the market's just got them beat and they're really focusing somewhere else, or maybe it's just not part of their long-term strategy. So you are less boxed into a single provider that way. So that's another benefit. So yeah, it gives you a little bit more agility and like I said, at least in my experience, some of these larger players are on older tech and they can be more cumbersome. So you do avoid that a little bit.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely agree. And of course, so we talked about the benefits, and of course now that comes the flip side, right? So what
Mhm.
business challenges do you see with either approach?
Okay. So, um, I don't know what you're talking about, Andreas. These questions you have.
I know,
Problems,
I
never.
know. Problems. Who has problems these
I
days?
thought you were in the solution business. We don't have
Oh
problem,
yeah,
right?
yeah, right. Yeah, sometimes you have to talk about the problems to avoid them, right?
That's right. No, absolutely. We like to joke, but for folks listening, like these are really complex issues. So let's talk single platform challenges. First of all, we all have our own filter as to what certain terms mean. So I'll tell you from experience, uh, uh, the term single platform to many of my colleagues, my former colleagues in the functional departments, and I'll try to quote lines verbatim. Things like, we don't want a bunch of bolt-ons, or we'll only have to train on one system. Or if we buy the Rolls-Royce of systems, then, it'll do way more than we need and we'll be able to grow into it for years. We won't outgrow that system. And when I think of single platform, I think of the things that I've discovered, sometimes the hard way. Single platforms are sold as a single platform, but they're sometimes cobbled together from prior acquisitions. Maybe they weren't integrated all that well after acquisition. Anybody work at a company where they've seen that happen? Well, it happens to these PLM vendors too. The modules vary wildly in functional capabilities sometimes, and they may not compete strong in the marketplace with certain functionality. You may still need internal integrations from one module to another within the platform because maybe they don't natively talk. And these things can surprise you if you were if you took the letter of what the salesperson said, verbatim, quite literally, right? Native reporting. I think we can also all relate to the fact that native reporting can be limited, a little bit more tactical. So it's probably not unreasonable that even on a single platform decision, you're probably going to build a data infrastructure to feed an analytics platform, reporting environment. So you're going to do that anyway. Lastly, you become dependent on a vendor who may not be able to prioritize you. Maybe you're in a niche business. Maybe they're getting disrupted, or maybe they're just big and it's hard for you to get attention and influence the roadmap or get support or bug fixes or things of that nature. So those are things to think of. I always suggest look at every big platform. You will find an ecosystem of third-party software providers that make connectors and augmented functionality and plugins and all sorts of stuff. And that gives you an indication as to the fact that people have been looking for ways to augment what this stack already has. So single platform has benefits for sure, but it has some downsides too. Quality also, that's one of those things that sits in between, Andreas. I mean, maybe there's a whole episode of this, right? But uh, you may not do 100% of all your quality in one system. Pre-sales, you have product design validation. Supply chain and manufacturing has various quality steps. Post sales, there's service support cases leading to failure analysis, recalls, upgrades, things of that nature. And many of those make their way back to the product design, the suppliers, or the assembly people, right? So you may have to traverse more than one platform in the quality world anyway, just in that one process, even if your major PLM functions are on a single vendor's stack. If you go with that more best module for the job, best of breed approach, you will create challenges if you allow separation of like functions. So if one group likes System X for requirements management and another group likes System Y for requirements management, like I would very much discourage that, for one thing. You really have to treat your integrations with the same priority as the application, not as an afterthought, not as just plumbing. You will need more discipline around process flow and data consistency because you can delay discovery of these issues to the testing phase. And you can incur a big project extension or change order if if you've gotten yourself into a mess. So maybe you buy a system and it's medium priced and then the team's excited because it's got the functionality that they're looking for. And it comes with one of those 2 week quick start implementation packages, right? But you're going best of breed. And there's no incentive in that kind of implementation model to integrate, not necessarily physically integrate, but integrate your business language and business workflow from one system to the next. And so that's an area where if you're going to take that approach, don't take a narrow approach to implementation of those satellite systems. Think about this end to end because you're implementing a unified business process. You're just doing it across multiple systems. Uh, there's also sort of maybe an in between. You may still use a big PLM vendor for certain things, just not everything, which often is a good choice. You get like the depth and the stability in those areas where that vendor is the leader. You can still be nimble and more modern outside of that stack when you need to be. So the big stack plus satellite systems approach can be a good one to look into also. So I would summarize all that by saying that, talk to people who use these platforms that you're looking at, not just the people that they refer you to as references, uh, user groups, user communities of practice, things of that nature, and get sort of the straight scoop on what that other company has experienced that might give you a little bit more of an understanding as to what are the really mature modules in that stack and where are some areas where, heck, you might want to go outside that stack anyway.
Yeah, all I think very, very valid point, and especially the part where well, everything was very valid, but the last point that one of the last points you made was you know go don't just talk to references, talk to some user groups, etc. Because of course the PLM software vendors give you the references that they want you to talk to, not necessarily to well the other users that may have had some more problems. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So that's certainly
Yeah.
a good point.
So it pays to be a little bit street smart in that area.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I think you brought up another really good point, and that is so if you have like functionality, you had the example of requirements management, right?
Mm.
And I completely agree. If you have a requirements management tool, then really all areas of the business who do requirements management should use the same tool because otherwise you already have two requirements management tool, and then you not only have
Right.
to integrate those two with each other, but probably those two with other tools that consume those requirements, right? So you increase complexity. However, that to me kind of goes back to how should I say that maybe that a one platform approach may be better after all, because if you have two requirements management tool and you have to kind of combine them, that you have to already have two areas of the business or maybe more talk with each other, right? And agree on one tool. So why not integrate everything into one big platform then instead of having, that requirements management tool again sitting outside of the big platform and of course buy or have to do another integration. But again, I agree with you. I think what's important is in every single instance to look at the specific situation, the specific needs, probably say, can we bring it into one integrated platform? If there are any business reasons or other reasons why that is not possible, because, for example, the integrated platform doesn't have the functionality that we need, then go outside. But in general, I guess my take would be try to integrate, have it all in one platform. If that's not possible, go outside. Don't compromise on some, I guess deficient functionality just to stay in the platform. Just
Yeah.
just my
Yeah.
thoughts on that.
That's a great thought.
Okay, so I want to dive a little bit more into the potential complexity of best of breed approach with multiple custom integrations. Um, First of all, even within that approach, with the best of breed with the integrations, there are two options. One is, to basically build direct integrations, custom integrations often
Mm.
between each one of those systems that need to talk with each other. So then you have a whole bunch of point-to-point integrations, right? You have, I don't know, four systems. They all need to talk with each other. So basically have seven integrations that you now have to build between all the systems that, every system talks with the other.
Yeah, they're like rabbits,
That of
right?
course,
They
what's
multiply.
that?
They're like rabbits, they multiply.
Right, exactly, yes. So that, of course, can be potentially a huge effort and a huge complexity because now you have to maintain all these seven point-to-point integrations, etc. So that's one option, right? The other approach or option is to use a middleware and basically have then an integration or connector between the middleware and each one of those four systems in the previous example, which you really then only have four of these connectors.
Right, right.
Um, if you were in that situation, I know you have been. Which approach, meaning platform, well, direct integration versus middleware, would you recommend, and why?
What a great way to illustrate the technical choices in integration, Andreas. I would start by zooming out and saying whether you're doing point to point or using a middleware slash integration platform. Uh, what is fundamental is the issue is whether integration is being treated as a first class design concern, not something IT will just plug in later. But there are pros and cons, right? So first of all, to frame these terms, point to point for folks, just to clarify, usually means like some one-off scripts or jobs that don't necessarily share common standards. They may not share common infrastructure and common support. So person X built this thing over here, person Y maybe did another one 2 years later. Maybe they both work at the company at that point in time. Maybe they don't. They're quicker to build. But once you scale beyond a few systems, things get messy. It gets harder to test. It's harder to maintain. It's harder to trust, frankly. Middleware or an integration platform like a Workato is a pretty popular one right now. Boomi, MuleSoft, and others. They centralize logic. They provide visibility centrally to all these different jobs that are running. So if somebody leaves, you at least have visibility. It could be, reduce some of the friction in supporting something that's legacy. And they do enforce some consistency. So it takes more upfront effort and cost, but the architecture is cleaner, and you gain advantages in monitoring, in retries of integration communications, and in change control and orchestration of changes. So, one trap that companies fall into when you get into this whole middleware discussion, Andreas, is it's a line item on the project budget, and there could be pushback, and that's partially how some of these point-to-point integration scenarios happen. So the long-term cost of point-to-point If you spread it across the headcount, the outages, the headaches, and the delays, right, that remains hidden until it's just a fiasco, right, and causing a lot of frustration. But it's very real.
Mm.
That said, both approaches can be done well or poorly. Middleware doesn't magically make things work, but it gives you the chance to do things well. Modern integration tools are low or no code. So here's a big benefit, everybody. You don't necessarily need a developer or even AI to create some of these things. You might have functional folks that can build connectors, which I think is, the democratization of all these tools is a big plus. And that's why but that still goes back to why governance is very important. So, and I would mention that technically there's a third model, service-oriented architecture, a service bus. This is more of a ring of communication that's driven by events. Systems publish and subscribe to data changes, but you see this more in advanced or scaled organizations. And for most companies, it's a later stage evolution. It's not a first step. So the real differentiators aren't just technical, they're operational. Did you evaluate how well your systems integrate out of the box? Like, do they have APIs for the data that you think you need to get to? Do you slash are you scoped to create a shared data language in this project? If not, you better think about that. Is there ownership for the integrations themselves, the change control, the documentation, the monitoring, the support, and so on? So that's what I meant by don't treat integrations as a second-class citizen. So that separates a nimble, connected business from one that's stitched together with duct tape. Integration can be a superpower or a liability. So the difference is whether you treat it like a strategy or an afterthought.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Wise words, for sure. I want to follow up on one thing you kind of hit or touched on AI. It's a hot topic these days,
Mhm.
and I want to kind of explore that a little bit in this context. That recently there have
Yeah.
been quite a bit of discussions about AI and knowledge graphs in the connection and context with PLM, on LinkedIn, other forums. Um, some people say that they make things easier to connect systems and work in federated or environments, or best of breed environments where you have different systems focusing on their specialty. What do you think about that? Can knowledge graphs and or AI really help in connecting the different best of breed systems and making them work better together?
Well, this is where I give you the highly eloquent response of big time. Yeah. But it's not a silver bullet, and they work best when they're layered on top of a well-considered architecture. It's not a cure-all if you've got a mess underneath. So knowledge graphs can help connect the dots across systems by mapping entities, products, parts, suppliers, requirements, etc. Even if those live in separate tools, that's pretty powerful, and they can provide a way to infer relationships, try to unify your vocabularies. Still, though, from a data perspective, you want to have those defined because it's not a miracle worker. It can't read the minds of the people that define that stuff when those things were implemented. But with decent data underneath, it can surface insights that wouldn't be obvious from just looking at raw data tables. AI, especially large language models, is showing promise in reducing integration friction. I've seen some demos of stuff that's pretty good at automating field mapping between systems. That saves a lot of time and error. You can generate connectors automatically. You can interpret unstructured documents like spec sheets or test results, and that's really valuable because unstructured data is always a challenge. So there's a lot of value in this, putting AI over your best of breed environment or hopefully your PLM major service provider having their strategy or at least a connector. But there is caution, right? If your underlying data is inconsistent, siloed, the AI is just going to reflect that in the same way that we saw across the industry BI projects failing when the reporting project just uncovered bad data, right? So you can't skip the work of defining that data model, your business process, and your business rules so that the AI understands that context. And the power of those tools is they really amplify your warts. And so they can really show where you shine data wise, but they can really expose, where you're lacking. So Absolutely, but it's a two-part deal. And as much as those things feel like dessert, you do have to eat your vegetables.
Yeah, indeed, before you go to the dessert, yes. Yeah, no, I think that's a great summary and a great way of putting it. I think, I mean, AI and knowledge graphs are certainly powerful, but you have to build the foundation first. You have to connect the systems before the knowledge graphs obviously can reach out and can connect the data with each other, but you still don't get around connecting the systems first. And of course, AI can help you with that, as you said, but then the data has to be good before AI can do something. Um,
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing great products just coming out. They're young, they're in development. There's some improvement required on some of these new enterprise AI platforms or like RAG as a service. It's incredibly promising. They all have said the same thing that that you got to give the AI a little something to work with.
right, exactly. Yeah, it's like as everywhere else, garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yeah.
And the AI doesn't all of a sudden make dumb data smart, but it can expose the smart data, the good data, and act on it, obviously. Yeah. So okay, to go back to the I guess one platform versus best in breed. So how does cost
I'm
play?
getting a distinct sense that you like the single platform, Andreas. Don't hold
Again,
back.
I don't have a preferred approach per se. I think I think there, as we talked about, there are benefits and disadvantages with either. So I just don't believe one can say, oh, one is better or the other is better, just as a general rule or guideline. Um, I believe that again, I think there is benefit of using an integrated platform as much as possible
Mhm.
without sacrificing, again, functionality that the business needs just to be in the integrated platform. I
Yeah,
think
and one thing we didn't talk about this maybe where it's probably so obvious, right? But when be really choosy if you do like a full platform as well as some satellite systems, or if you go best of breed, be really careful. Don't separate like every layer. Some of these systems, to Andreas's point, I mean they're there's so much built in from a functionality standpoint where they expect a certain part of the business process to flow into that same stack. And then when that workflow is complete for that to flow into another part of that same stack. So don't have a lot of stratification if you go that best of breed route or if you go with satellite systems. Maybe there's a great requirements management tool. Like, yeah, we're vendor agnostic, and I try not to mention too many vendors for that to feel like a commercial. But like, people love Jama, right? And people may not want the crustier version by insert big PLM vendor here. Okay, fine. But if you wanted to start separating CAD from PDM, from change control, from other layers that really you want to keep together, like that's where I would say be very careful. In fact, just don't. You're going to regret it.
right, exactly.
Um, yeah. So it's interesting to hear your thought there. I guess I'm in the you got to do what's right for the business, and it seems like I tend to land on most is in the big stack, and then you go outside of it when you need to because you may end up with too much customer or internal user frustration if you're limited to just those four walls.
Yep. No, I think we're largely in agreement there. It sounds like, yeah. Yeah. So
And it's
okay.
all free, right?
Oh yeah, right, exactly. And this is where you're actually leading this very nicely into the next point. So, where does cost play a role in all of this? Of course, you have the case with going one platform, basically the PLM software providers, the company, they kind of did the work up front a little bit for the customer, right? They integrated all the different functionality, the objects, whatever, in within their software platform, right?
Hmm.
and made all the data kind of work together. So that comes with the platform, more or less.
Right.
Um, in a best of breed and federated approach, of course, the customer has to build and maintain all the different connections, either between the various systems or again to the middleware. Um, However, a big platform may cost more because you buy functionality that you may not need.
Right.
Again, because you may not use all the functionality, but yet, I mean, it's obviously in there. And you can't simply say, oh, take it out, right? I'm gonna pay you less. That's not gonna work either. With
Not
a
after you've signed.
Yeah, well, probably even before, not before, because again, I mean, if it's in the system, right, I can buy different licenses, right? But if you have requirements management, but you only need part of requirements management, they're not going to sell you half of the requirements management license.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
not happening, right? So you're somewhat obviously stuck with what they're giving you versus in a best of breed approach. Obviously, again, you have the flexibility. I can really pick the system that meets exactly your requirements. But then again, you have to build the connections, the integrations. So what in terms of cost, what do you think is more cost effective? What
Yeah.
do the different solutions look like, I guess?
Well, I think you're spot on. A federated model is likely to look more expensive on paper, right? Um, Especially early on when you don't know what you're missing, you don't know what you don't know at that point in time, and that's back to that street smart thing of like how much of this vendor stack that you're looking at, where are the pitfalls, where are the modules that aren't really invested in, make sure that our previous episode. I'm going to do a little plug here for our previous episode for all three of our viewers. Is we talked a bit about what approach can you take to match your business capability needs and properly evaluate a prospective software vendor. So that's worth listening to. But I think that by starting with your business goals and working your way down to your options. Uh, that helps a lot because the options are infinite and it helps ground you and your approach. So like we were at a company where or we did a project together where the company had some unique requirements around having a high what variability within their product configuration, I guess is the way you would say it.
Yep.
So their options were limited to a few providers and core functionality. They release bombs frequently. And so it was kind of easy for them to hone in on like who the candidates are. And I would say for even if you feel like your company, whoever's listening is more milquetoast, more basic, I'll bet you're going to find out if you look at all your capability needs and start looking at different systems, whether or not you can live within one of these single platforms, it's going to become clear to you. So by the time you've determined the system candidates for your business, which could be limited, your personalized version for your company is then going to become easier to price out. So and by the way, if you're a tech leader and you don't have an integration platform already in your strategy, um, you really want to think about how you got this far without having one. A program like this could be the impetus to putting one in place. If you don't have shark-like negotiation skills, believe me, you'd be surprised how low you can get prices from the big vendors. But if you don't have that, or if you don't have access to a third party that can help get these prices down for you, then that federated model is going to look more expensive on paper. So my parting comment is, I like a combo where you can use the industry leading modules from the big vendors, but maybe have a policy in place where you can go around that when it's prudent, but it shouldn't be uncontrolled. It should be managed.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely concur. Okay, well, I think that takes us to the end of our discussion and conversation. Thank you so much, Joseph, for being here again today and for your insights and practical perspective. Um, Yeah, and thank you to the listeners for your interest in our podcast, for spending this about 45 minutes with us. Please visit plmadvisors.com for more podcasts. As Joseph just said, that there are more. We did one previously, and also other PLM insights.
Yeah, and drop a comment or maybe a topic that we should talk about or something like that if you're listening. So
That's a great idea. Yes, thank you, Joseph. We would definitely be happy to uh, yeah, discuss those and provide some insights from our point of view. All right, thanks everyone, and have a wonderful rest of the day wherever you are. Goodbye.
see you next time.